husband's friend, J.D. Vance, elected for 48 in the most resounding way possible.
Something is definitely off with Erika Kirk.
Is he the person you'll plan to ultimately support for 2028?
He's a dear friend. My husband and him were very good friends.
So, J.D. Vance just cut Erika Kirk clean off, shutting down any delusions she had that they would ride off into the sunset together. And Erika is not handling it well, because J.D. isn't just mildly upset or doing this because his PR people told him to do that. Insiders say the moment J.D. saw those X-rated texts between Erika and her ex, he was disgusted. He couldn't believe he even entertained her for a second, and once he made that realization, he backtracked fast. And while Erika has been running in circles to contain the fallout of those leaked texts, J.D. has already distanced himself in a way that makes it clear he's not planning to stick around to find out how this ends.
And I see no one will ever replace my husband. No. But I do see some similarities of my husband in JD.
Before this blew up publicly, J.D. Vance was still very much wrapped up inside Erika's world. But everything changed the moment those messages from her ex slipped out of the shadows and landed where she never thought they would. And to be clear, these texts were never blasted across mainstream outlets or trending headlines. But that almost made it worse, because instead of being dismissed as internet noise, they traveled privately and eventually ended up right on J.D.'s desk. Now before that happened, Erika clearly believed she was still ahead of the situation. She even went on an interview trying to seize control of the narrative early, warning people sharing this news about her to stop or else.
Stop. That's it. That's all I have to say. Stop.
Apparently, she assumed that if the leaks stayed unofficial, JD would never actually see them. But that assumption backfired, because JD did see them. And when he did, he was shocked because those raw messages didn't line up with anything she had been selling him behind closed doors. The content was explicit enough that it directly contradicted the trad wife image she had carefully built around herself, the same one she believed would keep JD tied to her. And that contradiction is what reportedly set him off, not just the embarrassment of the leak, but the realization that the persona he'd been dealing with didn't match the private behavior staring back at him in black and white. The more people replayed the whole thing, the more obvious it was that the warning signs were already there, starting with that infamous hug that played out in front of everyone. The hug that instantly shifted the tone of how people saw Erika and JD together. As you guys probably remember, this was the moment when whispers started turning into suspicion, because the way she latched onto him didn't read like a polite public interaction, it read personal, almost possessive.
And I see no one will ever replace my husband. No. But I do see some similarities of my husband in JD. And Vice President J.D. Vance. I do.
It was even weirder when she went on to introduce JD as being like Charlie, literally 2 minutes after Charlie died. Mind you, JD's wife Usha was literally sitting right there in the audience, watching this whole thing unfold in real time. But Erika leaned in anyway, closing the space, rubbing his head, holding on longer than necessary, moving like the room didn't exist. JD, on the other hand, didn't look relaxed or reciprocal. He looked stiff, guarded, smiling the way people do when they're trying to get through a moment without causing a scene, while she was very obviously the one driving the physical closeness. Now here's where it really started aging badly, because when Erika finally had a clean opportunity to shut the rumors down on the Megyn Kelly show, she didn't take it. Instead of drawing a clear boundary or acknowledging how that moment looked from the outside, she brushed it off by saying she hugged JD like that because her love language was physical touch, claiming that's just how she hugs everyone. She even doubled down by saying the people uncomfortable with it probably just needed a hug themselves.
Forgive me, did you see people didn't understand the hug that you and JD had? They went to the weirdest places, Erika.
Oh my gosh. You guys, please. So for those of you who know me, I hug is
Yes,
like,
you're an intense hugger. It's
whoever
awesome.
is like hating on a hug needs a hug themselves.
And that response didn't calm anything down. It just reframed a very specific moment as everyone else's problem. This is why, now that everything else has come out, people are realizing that the hug wasn't random, it was a preview. Now here's where it stopped being awkward and turned into something that reportedly made JD outright disgusted. Once he allegedly read the text, there was no distancing himself emotionally from what they revealed. According to people close to the situation, he had a visceral reaction to the screenshots. And what pushed pushed it over the edge was the context surrounding JD himself, because at the same time these messages surfaced, there were already unconfirmed but persistent rumors circulating that JD had been preparing to divorce Usha and move forward with Erika. As you guys probably noticed back then, JD and Usha had already started looking estranged at events, and Usha had been seen multiple times without her wedding ring. This immediately set speculation on fire that something behind the scenes was already breaking down. That's why the Erika angle caught so much traction. To outsiders, it feels like JD was already emotionally detaching from one life and inching toward another, and Erika was actively positioning herself as the clean, ideologically aligned alternative. White, Christian, outspokenly conservative. A perfect fit for the image JD's political base expects. Usha, on the other hand, was framed online as the opposite: Indian, immigrant, Hindu, and visibly outside the MAGA aesthetic. That dynamic mattered because it meant JD wasn't just risking his marriage, he was risking his reputation and his credibility, all on the assumption that the person he was leaning toward was exactly who she claimed to be. So when Erika's past texts suddenly came to life in front of him, explicit, unfiltered, and impossible to reconcile with the persona she'd sold him, it didn't just feel like embarrassment, it felt like betrayal. Once those alleged texts surfaced, everything Erika thought she had buried came rushing back at once, and it turned into a full investigation into who she really was. People started digging into her long trail of relationships, which was publicly documented, even though she'd repeatedly claimed she never dated. And it didn't stop there. Her past as a video vixen resurfaced, including that one raunchy music video she'd clearly hoped everyone forgot about. This was followed by clips from her time on Summer House, where she's drinking, partying, and openly dating multiple men. None of this was new material, but that was the problem. It had always existed, and she'd simply assumed it would never be relevant again. But once the spotlight turned harsh, the past she'd tried to outgrow connected itself directly to the present moment, making the leaked texts feel less like an anomaly and more like a pattern. That's why the fallout hit as hard as it did, because now everyone, including JD, wasn't just reacting to explicit messages, they were reacting to the realization that the persona he'd bought into may never have been real in the first place. And once that clicks, there's no walking it back. And now, instead of disappearing, Erika is clearly making one last play to pull herself back into JD's orbit. She's announced her endorsement of him for the next presidential election, lined up press moments that conveniently center her as aligned, loyal, and ideologically useful, and started positioning herself as a future-facing MAGA figure.
We are going to get my husband's friend, J.D. Vance, elected for 48 and the most resounding way possible.
It's almost like she's trying to remind him and his base of what she thinks she still offers. And the timing of it all hasn't gone unnoticed. After everything, her actions now feel like a calculated move to insert herself back into JD's circle. But here's the part that's making people stop and pause. None of it appears to be landing with JD. He hasn't acknowledged her or shown any signals that the door is even cracked open. By all accounts, he's done. And not in a dramatic way, but in the kind of final silence that doesn't leave room for negotiation. Which is why the situation feels so uncomfortable. Because if this public rebrand isn't enough to pull him back in, the real question becomes how far Erika is willing to go next, and whether she realizes that this time, there may be no way back at all. For all the noise Erika is making now, the loud endorsements, the interviews, the positioning, the silence from JD is doing more damage than any statement ever could. He didn't drag her publicly or explain himself. He just stepped away and let the contrast speak for itself, letting people draw their own conclusions about why someone he once entertained isn't even worth acknowledging anymore. What started as leaked texts turned into a full collapse of credibility, and instead of regaining control, every move she's made since has only reinforced why he walked in the first place. So now Erika is out here pushing forward alone, trying to force relevance back into a story that already moved on without her, while JD stays quiet, detached, and seemingly unmoved by any of it.